Hello and welcome to another weekly update. I hope you're doing well. I hope you've had a good week. It's been a busy week because we've had Microsoft Build, and that really drives the focus and the direction for the things we're going to talk about this week. I think everything we're talking about this week is build related, and that's kind of no surprise. And I'm just going to focus in on a few specific areas of interest for me in build, because the honest truth is I'm still catching up on all the content. So I've focused purely on the things that have been really interesting to me, as a Teams developer, as a Microsoft Teams developer. And so that's where we're going to start. And then towards the end, I'm just going to broaden out slightly. There's a really good blog post I want to point you at if you just need a good overview of everything else that's at Build that, let's be honest, you're not going to get to the session content for, and you just want the headlines for. All right, so let's make a start straight away. The first blog post I want to tell you about is one of my blog posts, and I kind of in the post, after kind of day 1, day 2 of Build, after all the announcements are out, I put together a blog post with my kind of top 6 features for Microsoft Teams developers, and so I want to show you that now. And really, mostly this is, this is aimed at obviously Teams developers, but I think if you use Teams, this is kind of interesting as well. I'm just going to go through these really, really quickly. I'm not going to go through the full details because that's kind of what the blog post is for. But I draw not just around Microsoft Teams stuff. So the first one is Azure Communication Services. There's some interesting new interop capabilities there. This is a really interesting one. Now, if you've heard anything about Build, you'll know about Copilot and plugins, and we're going to dig into that a little bit in a minute. The really interesting thing I wanted to call out was that your existing Microsoft Teams messaging extensions that you've built and any Power Platform connectors that you've built, they are going to be able to be used by Copilot as sources of information, which is really interesting because it really means that as a developer, the investment you've made in some of those extensions, in some of those connectors, isn't wasted. And that's really, really good to see. And also actually gives Copilot a massive boost of functionality right out of the gate. As you can see in this little animated GIF that is repeating, the user kind of doesn't actually even mention the kind of Jira bot or anything specifically like that. The user is talking to Copilot and says create a Jira ticket, and Copilot is kind of knows what that means and knows to invoke a task module for Jira, pass it a bunch of information so the user can just put some final bits in, and then have it done. And that could that could well have come from a messaging extension. So that's very, very interesting to me. There's also of interest the Teams AI library. Again, we're going to see more and more of this as we go, and I expect I'll kind of do some videos or something about that. Again, once we get our head around it and understand it, because there is a lot going on. There's already a quick start guide though, so actually you might be all right just to jump in and start using it straight away, which is cool. We've got some live share stuff. That's all now GA, which is interesting. And then this is less developery, but to be honest, it's like their broad appeal. If you use Teams, I think you should know about these things. Avatars in Teams are now GA, and immersive spaces for Teams meetings, really interesting. You'll be able to make the jump into the metaverse just in the same way that you do Together Mode or Large Gallery. So that's cool. I mean, this is new. This is not out yet. It's coming. I think it's just coming into private preview. There's an announcement for it anyway, so it's not something you can do today. But it's going to be interesting. This is going to be interesting for developers, and this is why I wanted to include it in here as well, because this is going to be an interesting one for developers to get their heads around and understand, where the gaps are and where they can add value with custom experiences. So that's interesting. Well, there is a specific build session that I put a link to in that blog post around how you build in 3D and Mesh. And so if you have no knowledge or experience of building in kind of 3D spaces, and I don't, I'm going to be watching that session to figure out where you even start with doing some of that stuff, because that's not a world I really understand very well. All right, I did say we were going to focus in a little bit on Copilot plugins, and there's a whole kind of top-level blog post by Rajesh Jha, he's the Executive Vice President for Experiences and Devices. So this is kind of a top-level, good overview blog post talking all about plugins for Copilot, what Microsoft are thinking, what the direction of travel is there, and why they think they're important. So there's a whole bunch here. If you need a justification for why you should spend time on doing it, this is a good blog post to start with. There's a roundup of all the different announcements, and everything that's going. And so where you go for the developer early access program also goes into some information with what Copilot is bringing to semantic index. And there's a whole bunch of stuff. So this is a good overview blog post for kind of all the interesting kind of Copilot developer news. That's why I wanted to put it in here. It's not very long to read, and it's got some good links out to, if you want to go and find more stuff like that. It's got some videos in it as well if you just want to see some of the demos from Build. So I thought that was a good one. And then finally, I'm going to try and keep it quite short this week because everyone just wants to go and watch Build content. So I kind of want to respect that. And if you, like me, have focused in just on a few different areas, but you know that all of the rest of Build is kind of happening around you and you're a bit worried that maybe you've missed some stuff, what else, and you're just curious really about what else is happening in the rest of the Build kind of sphere, then Mary Jo Foley, who is at Directions on Microsoft now, has done a kind of good blog post which just rounds up across the board everything that businesses need to know. So there's always lots and lots of information at something like Build, and it's easy to get drawn into like the kind of new, cool, techie stuff. But I think it's very useful sometimes to ground yourself back into what's actually interesting for, businesses, and where, like if you're working inside of an organization, or you're a partner company to an organization, these are the things you kind of should be focusing in and thinking about, because these are the things that will essentially, if businesses care about them, then products and services that evolve to use them are going to do well, and that's interesting. And there's definitely a place for, I think, for the techie stuff and pushing the boundaries of what's cool and interesting. And that's a different thing. But I think if you're into that and that's where you're looking, you don't need me. You've got the Build session catalog. You can go and find that stuff out for yourself. This is more, okay, what do businesses need? And that's why I think this is a good blog post by Mary Jo, just to round up what's interesting about Build. Now, there's going to be some crossover with the two blog posts I just showed you, because there's stuff in here around Copilot, and that takes up the first kind of third of the blog post. But then Mary Jo goes places that I haven't really investigated, which is why I thought this was a useful blog post. So things like Fabric, Azure Linux, some new Win32 app isolation technology. I am not all over the detail of these things, but it's important to know they exist, so that if you're in a business or you're working for a business where this is a specific need that has now been met, now you know that it kind of exists. So this is kind of in a good, I think, place to just go to make sure you're on top of the general gist of the big announcements at Microsoft Build. And then you can always dig into the session catalog. You can watch all the sessions on demand. They're available, and they will be for some time. So you can do that as long as you're registered, and it's free to register for Build. So you can go and do that. Okay, that's all the big news for this week. It's all Build related. That's definitely been the focus of this week. So it's been nice and easy in some ways. Right, that's all I wanted to talk about this week. I had a fantastic time last week at the European Cloud Summit, the European Cloud Summit. Fantastic conference, always a great venue, great people, great organisers. Fantastic to catch up with so many speakers and attendees. And we had some really, really good times. It's going to be one of those ones that I won't forget for a while, I think. So it was really nice. But it's good to be back. And this week I will have the Comms v Next conference video out. Just kind of wrapping up what that was like. So look out for that one. We'll see what else the week brings. More announcements, I'm sure, and hopefully, fingers crossed, I might even get a chance to dig into some more Build content, and that might generate some more blogs. We'll see. All right, whatever it is you're doing this week, have a great week, and I will speak to you again next time.